Got a good crowd today, though. Osama's here, Marty's here, nice. Ojo, Andromeda, Xanther, cool. Irista, Michael Solomon. Leaves too, that's good. Okay, so we are now live, kind of just casually hanging out, which with Stephen and with I'm kind of drunk, which is a good fan who's come here with a number of questions for today. So the Q&A and critique will be starting in approximately 5 minutes. Hold on to your horses. Meanwhile, take a look at my animation that's currently being worked on at the moment. Yeah. There it is.
That was his Tinder page.
That was Mike's Cloud. I was uploading a DJ mix that I did a couple weeks ago. Meanwhile,
Yeah.
So I just animated the cover of the next album that DJ Unknown has released, and it is now currently published today. So this animation is now rendered, which is good. So I'll be able to send it to my the DJ, and he will publish it on his social networks, which obviously would be better in higher definition. But it was good fun just animating the character. He's falling.
Looking good. So did you just manually rig that yourself?
This was actually a converted Mixamo rig.
As you do.
Unfortunately, the Mixamo add-on is now currently broken. So it doesn't no longer working anymore. But
You know,
it's because I'm using Blender 4.0 in the background.
could you just not export it out as FBX? You could have.
Yeah, but the control rig is generated after you've exported the deform rig.
Oh, right. So that's the whole point, yeah.
Yeah, so the generated rig is no longer compatible. But the hands is a custom rig, the face is a custom rig, and I just mix and match. Maybe in the future I'll use another type of mocap type of rig. We'll see what's out there. 4.0 breaks so many add-ons.
Yeah, well, yeah, it breaks quite a lot. So did 3.6, but to a certain extent.
I feel like not as many as in 4.0, to be honest. I think 1 out of every 40 add-ons for me is pretty much went kaput. 1 out of 30.
No. Since we're on this, so since we're on the subject of Maximal, might as well diverse the conversation just a little bit. So
sure.
Obviously, we can call this the start.
Yeah.
So obviously, because we're doing the boss fight, like you have to show a certain element of slow motion. So I took the Maximal rig and I just cut it in LA editor and I just stretched it out. Because I just took it was 130 frames and I just pulled out and it looked quite good. And I thought that was so easy.
Yeah.
So just retiming a rig to slow stuff down or make things go faster. It was like, yay, split it, done.
You're done. Yeah, the NLA is getting much nicer to use these days. I'm very happy for that. Already has mentioned, not looking forward to all the Python he has to change for 4.0. Oh dear.
I know.
Arista mentions, I feel like most of the recent releases of Blender eliminate the need for some of the add-ons already out there. I still use about 100 add-ons.
I used to be. I mean, don't get me wrong, I love advertising add-ons and I love supporting developers, but there is a certain time where I just try and keep it as much vanilla as possible now. And it's mainly like when you boot up Blender, it was getting to the point it was taking like 2 minutes just to load. You know what I mean? With the amount of shitty add-ons I had installed. So I've kind of went back away.
Oh, really?
I've reverted.
Though I found with 4.0 the load times is way faster than it has been, so I still have my 100 add-ons activated and it loads about. Well, maybe it's my new computer. Yeah, so scratch that. I got my new computer.
I would imagine it's your new computer.
Yeah, it takes 10 seconds and it's 100 add-ons are loaded.
I wonder how quick your computer would render my scene, actually. If I could test.
Pretty alright, I suppose. Could be okay.
Okay. Anytime you want to start this conversation.
Yes, okay, now it's 15 past, so now the small chit-chat's all done, the tongues are warmed up, we're ready to go. So, hello everybody, welcome to the Q&A&Critique, episode 100, in the Let's Bforartists edition. So everybody, thank you so much for connecting, and thank you so much for tuning in for all of these episodes. Thank you to all the guests for getting to this episode as well, for who has presented in the past, who have asked the questions, everybody who has shared their answers and been a part of this project over the past nearly 2 years or so, almost, I think. And it's kind of been a monumental moment ever since we started in Arundel's Discord server with the first 50 episodes where I didn't know what I was doing, and it was a crazy time. And then the next 50 episodes here with some really great artists and high caliber pieces of art and art talks that we had. It has been very exciting, and I'm very happy to share this episode with a co-host, Stephen Scott. So Stephen Scott has been a YouTuber and a good friend who has revolutionized my world look when it comes to freelancing and my self-worth. He's really dominated my imposter syndrome, and he's really pushed me forward, and his voice is absolutely special. So if you haven't heard of Stephen Scott, I highly recommend you look him up on YouTube for his content. And I have handed over the hosting leadership to Stephen Scott, and also opened the stage to a regular fan here, I'm Kinda Drunk. That is his user tag name. I'm not actually drunk. But in other words, we have a lot of questions done by I'm Kinda Drunk and the fan base. Stephen Scott's going to ask them. I have no idea what they are. And with that, we're going to get to know a little bit about me as a request. And with additional information at the end of the show, I'll also be teasing you of what's coming to Bforartists 3.6.2 and a little special surprise from me as a gift, which is still a work in progress, but I'll tease you on it anyway. So I hope you have a really good time here in the next following hour. I'm very happy that you're here, Stev, and I'm Kinda Drunk. So let's begin.
Well, firstly, I'm not a YouTuber.
Well,
I have a YouTube. I have a YouTube channel. Does that count?
Yes, it does.
No, it doesn't. Yeah, I think that's probably the most professional. I think that's the most professional introduction I've ever had. So thank you. You make me sound special.
To me, you are.
Okay, I'm going to ask you the very first question. It's not on the list.
Okay.
Who is the most influential, or who is the best person that you have personally interviewed?
Who is the best person I've personally interviewed?
Yes, I mean, 100 episodes, you've got quite a lot to pick from.
Yes, there's a lot. It's hard to... Can I pick a top 3?
Nope, you need to pick one.
That's
You
rough.
don't get that privilege.
Oh, that's rough. Let me just take a look at my list. 1 second. I interviewed him not too long ago. He was a Brazilian who lives in Portugal by the name of... He did a lot of MPR art. And I really enjoyed his outlook and his style with his artwork and how he implemented it. Paulo Bravo is the interview. It was a lot of fun. But a close runner-up was Duncan Rudd. Duncan Rudd was hugely inspirational with his work. I enjoyed Duncan Rudd's outlook to his own hobbies, to his professional career, how he manages his family, the type of things that he experimented on YouTube, the short films that he produced, the stories behind the short films. Between those two, they're almost a tie. But I know I'm cheating. I'm making two come together as one. But I like those two a lot. But everybody
Yeah,
had something.
I'll let you away with that. So
Let's make some enemies. Look what's the word.
I was
It's just the worst.
Just kidding.
Oh, the worst
you
one?
can tell you can tell me after the stream.
Yeah, when we're offline, so nobody gets hurt.
I think it's maybe better. It's a little bit self-indulgent having you as the special guest for the 100th episode. Do you not think?
I agree. And I was debating if I should do this or not, but this is a fan
jump on the
service for
bullet.
you. I'm kind of junk.
To jump on the bullet, that was actually proposed by me because.
Oh, well, all right, okay.
And you're gonna get caught in the crossfire now, Stephen. The thing is, I'm really glad to be part of this because I'm a huge fan of you both guys. Because Dre's, you've got this incredible project of the Q&A, and Stephen helped me a lot with the Blender Royale. So it's like on the Blender multiverse. This is an incredible crossover. I can say that you guys literally changed my life for the best while I was at the worst times possible, literally. So thank you guys. But
Don't mention it.
Don't mention it.
But I'm gonna give you guys a hard time. So,
Okay.
Drace, last time we talked, we were talking about movies, and you said your first contact was with some animations and hand-drawn stuff. I wanted to ask you, what kind of other media did you start consuming? Like maybe children books or any kind of media that you were firstly presented with, non-digitally, not only digital media.
Okay. When I was young and a kid, I studied at home, so I never went to school. So I had a lot of
really?
free time as a kid. So I don't know what school's like. I have no idea. So my
No, and how was it? And how was it like being homeschooled?
a lot of free time, yeah. I studied maybe 3 to 5 hours a day, and then the rest of the day was free. I had a lot of hobbies, a lot of arts, a lot of toys, a lot of Lego. But at the same time, like maybe once or twice, or once every 2 weeks or so, my parents would take me to the library, and I would bring back a lot of books, illustrated books, story books, even long form books for later. And
But what about your social life then? Like, I had no idea. Like, how would you meet people? How would you? Because you're very talented with people. Like, you know how to get along with different people. And how did you learn that without going to school?
well, I have 4 siblings, and I would usually wait for my cousins to get out of school that lived around the block. So I would usually hang out with my cousins, and I had some other friends. And in New Zealand, you actually there's quite a large, I guess you could say, hippie community of homeschoolers that usually do museums and fairs and sports and art festivals or whatever, with multiple families. And these families are not small. They had 10 kids, 7 kids, 5 kids, and so children were everywhere. And these families would get together, and I would have a lot of social life in that regard to some degree. But at the same time, I was perfectly fine. I left home when I was about 19. So I traveled the world as my first prerogative of independence. Got myself into debt, lost 13 kilos, hitchhiked and backpacked like a hobo, I guess you could say, for about 3 or 4 years before I started taking 3D seriously. So that moment of childhood before the traveling, I consumed a lot of books. And also, because I was homeschooled, I also had very restricted access to television, and that made me consume books quite a bit more than television at the time. I wasn't allowed to watch Dragon Ball Z or Pokemon or anything. I had a very strict parents and a sheltered bubble, I guess you could say, in that regard. But
Mhm.
I did get to read some cool series about that.
That's kind of something I want to pick up on as well. I'm assuming you were homeschooled not because of religious reasons. So you weren't Amish per se, you know what I mean?
Mm.
So why were you homeschooled? Because obviously I've got 4 daughters, and we did contemplate homeschooling them, but then we sent them to the Gaelic school. So is there a reason why you're homeschooled, or was that just what you'd done?
The
What was
first
the methodology?
reason, well, the first reason was I was born of bilateral club feet, which means I was going through operations and recovery to learn how to walk as a child by the time I needed to start school. So because of that, my parents couldn't take me to school at the time when everybody else was starting, so they were looking for alternatives. So they found that community in New Zealand where you can get permission from the government to study at home, and they send like a psychologist and assessment every so often, and you can just you can go through primary that way. So they thought, oh, that's cool. They found the curriculum that they liked, and then they realized, hang on a minute, this is really cheap. And so they decided to continue doing it with my other siblings when they came into the world, mainly out of
And
costs.
you're the eldest, correct?
That is correct.
Yeah. What age are you? You're nearly pushing 40 now, eh?
Close. I'm 35 now. 5 years off. Not too bad.
That's
I thought
fine.
that was kind of offensive, Stephen.
I
Come
sound
on.
like I'm 40.
No, you're getting there.
I'm close, yeah.
Yeah, I mean, honestly, don't worry. When you get to 40, it's cool. I wouldn't know myself, but yeah, I'm not far off 40, to be honest.
All right, we're getting there. The race.
Next week.
Yeah. 40 is the new 28, says Kelly, and I agree.
White Rooster Road sold. Just give up.
Just give up. Barty's like a bunch of young punks.
I like the way we just divided the entire community in less than one sentence.
Yeah. All right.
So, what was the driving force to leave home?
The driving force to leave home was because I was the oldest. I guess my culture. I grew up in New Zealand, but then I went to Colombia when I was about 13 years old. I did my high school at home as well until about 18, started teaching English. And by then I had already started to practice doing some 3D. So my first 3D projects was basically done as a hobby for my father. He did puppets, and he has a YouTube channel as well with about 50,000 followers with woodwork and puppets and some green screen stuff done. It's kind of crazy. My dad, my kooky dad, has a YouTube channel. But I did some television titles in animation with True Space for him. And I started teaching English, I started getting my finances, but then they said, okay, you're 18, start thinking about what you want to do with your life. And I was like, I don't know, I want to see the world before deciding. So I got this world trip that started with a kind of, I guess you could say, a theological school and with some volunteer work. And that bought me a world ticket, which was about 20 flights, 15 stopovers, 4 continents over 1 year, and then an open-end ticket to whatever I needed or wanted to do. And I thought, sure, why not? So I started traveling the world. I'd already done some volunteer work here in Colombia. That was one of the reasons why we came, building houses and helping street kids and stuff like that. But after that, I decided to travel because I wanted to see the world. I thought I was old enough and I felt very sheltered. I knew nothing. And once I saw the world, it kind of slapped me in the face. Well, this place is big and crazy. And that kind of opened my worldview quite a lot. Yeah, but that was a long trip, as I mentioned, 3-4 years before I came back to Colombia. But I
So-
wanted to see the world, really, because I felt uneducated. I didn't know what I wanted to do.
I don't think anybody really knows what they want to do. I think most of us just kind of stumble into certain things. But you did mention True Space then, so that kind of pushes me on to my next question. What was the first experience of 3D software that you basically experienced? What did you come across first? Like, so for example, myself, obviously we had the school computers where you had CAD and stuff like this, and we had the Commodore 64s, and we had the BBC Micros and stuff like this. But the first real piece of 3D software that I remember was an application called Coolio, and it was a map editor for Quake at the time. And that was the first time I'd ever kind of experienced a 3D viewport and stuff like this. So, what was yours?
My first experience was basically this. This was my first model in TrueSpace. So I used TrueSpace by Calligraphy as my first software. That I used version 3 or 4. And then I worked really hard, and then I purchased 5.5, which came as a CD in a box with a big, massive manual. And then later on, I purchased 6.6, and then I got 7.6 for free in 2008 when Microsoft bought out Calligraphy and then released the software for free and killed it. But I used it through my adolescence as I started to make things like I started to try make my keyboard, tried to make my monitor that I had, an old CRT. I started making like a conceptualizing. This is some like the basic animations and rigs for like Christian television. Started trying out different renders. This render here took half an hour to render because of the volumetrics. Did like animations for different periods of the year for this television show that was done on a local channel here in the city. I did like tried to do some sci-fi stuff. Tried to figure out box modeling, subdivision modeling, and my first scene was actually this one here. So this, after I did that like computer monitor, I made this scene, and I was maybe 13 years old, and I accidentally deleted everything. And I was pretty emotional and cried about it. But these were my first experiences of like trying to learn TrueSpace, which was like based on icons, based on really simple subsurface, or really simple subdivision modeling, box modeling, things like that. Started creating different types of aliens and characters. That was my first experience in 3D. And it was good fun. I especially like this character.
So, you do seem to be an omen for 3D software. That's TrueSpace they killed, and you were also a XSI user, were you not?
Yes.
Blender, watch out.
Blender, watch out. So after traveling the world, I came back to Colombia and I started teaching English again. And during that time, I started working on a television show, which also has a YouTube channel called La Pelota Loca, if you can find it. It has a couple of kids' animations with a couple million views. Really simple stuff. And with that, I actually got to, let's see if I can find it. Here we go. So this show here, super simple stuff as well. Basically teaching kids how to read and write, or yeah, there's like this ball and these little chickens, and I made, for example, this lemon sing, or I made this orange sing. I started practicing animation with this small little studio of about 5 people here in Bogota in the city. This was after my trip, after I taught English for a couple of years and things like that. I slowly got back into 3D, slowly purchased myself a new computer after I kind of lost weight and got sick and traveled around the world, just losing myself. But then I realized what I actually did want to do after the trip, so it did help. And I got this internship in this small studio, working on some pretty fun stuff. And they used Softimage. They were the only people that I knew that used Softimage. And they swore by it. And I did like it. And I used it for maybe 5 years. 3 years with these people, and then another 2 years on my own. But by then, Autodesk had an expiry date, and I actually lost all my know-how that I had for that particular project. But I understood some things. And the last project I did for that studio was this pilot episode for television, 20 minutes worth of animation. And
Oh,
I did this particular animation as well, kind of like a short little music video. This actually won a local award for the animation. But the studio eventually gave me some bad blood at the end of the day, because this particular project did not sell, and they didn't get financing, and they didn't pay me. So I kind of left the project, and they gave me their computers as a payment and a settlement, and we just left it at that, and I started my freelance career from there. So I did 20 minutes of animation practically on my own with a number of different characters and everything. I learned a lot, and this was how I kind of broke into the idea of animation and also pushing through the slog of getting things done. And this was done with Mental Ray in Softimage, and from there the software died, and I started thinking of, okay, now what? What can I use that won't die? Because all these software that you purchase, some expensive, some cheap, they all die. So I thought there needs to be something that doesn't die. So that's why I started picking up Blender.
So, how long were the render times on that scene? Do you remember?
Yeah. Some of these shots would take 45 minutes. Some of them would take 20 minutes. Smaller shot would take maybe 5 minutes. Eventually, I could optimize things from 40 minutes down to 10, 15 minutes per frame. These ones would be 5 minutes.
I think a lot of people forget, especially with the kind of introduction of Eevee and real-time render engines, even Octane to a certain extent, how quick renderings came along.
Yes, absolutely incredible right now. Like, for example, this grass here would just sit here for like a minute or 2 or 5 minutes, just going through this grass tile or 2 tiles. And it's like, oh man, can't afford doing grass.
You don't even have reflections in the scene.
I do have basic. No, I don't. Yeah.
No, that's a texture map.
Yeah, I don't have any bounce light, nothing. It's all just manual. And everything's done in layers as well. This was about 20 different passes. Trees on a different, the birds on a different, the girls on another, the grasses on another. Everything's composited back together again to optimize 40 minutes to 10. Ugh, so much work.
So we've got a question here on Discord. Dreas, when you mentioned you were volunteering experience, did you directly approach people and offer your assistance?
No. In this case, we had a foundation which had some families that they wanted to build houses for, and they had a company donate wooden pallets. So we would dismantle the wooden pallets and build the houses from the recycled wood and give that house to families who are in need, usually from displaced neighborhoods in the south of Bogota from the historic civil war in the past. So these families are practically living on dirt floors, so we got the recycled wood. Actually, come to think of it, I may have one of those projects in notes. Let's see if I can remember it.
So, I'm kind of going off track here. Do you miss that life? I mean, 3D is quite stressful. Sometimes I just think, I'd rather be sitting out in my garden than looking at this computer. You know what I mean?
Having hammered nails into a building in the cold breeze with wet splashing in your face from the rain, no. And also sometimes some of the families that we helped, they were still addicted to bazuco, which is a very cheap form of cocaine here, or crack, even cheaper than crack. Highly addictive, and it ruins people's lives, and we tried to help the family, and in the end, we couldn't. Didn't change anything really. It helped the quality of life of the children over their childhood, but at the end of the day, it's really hard to get out of that world, even though we were giving away houses, right? So it was difficult to. It didn't feel as fulfilling, and I thought, if I want to make a difference in the world, I'd rather do something I would do in my free time on my own, in the comfort from home, and where more people could take a look at what I could do. Maybe I could get to know, talk to more people, share a better quality of life with ideas and images and work in the digital sphere of things. To me, I felt like I had more. No, I felt like I was doing more of a difference if I stuck to what I like to do instead of hammering nails in recycled wood. I felt like wasn't really doing a difference there, unfortunately. So yeah, I do the exercise and things like that, and try to get out of the house and get into the real world and things like that. But the sense of fulfillment for me was not in the physical, more in this animation kind of aspect, which seems idealistic, but where I was
But do you
coming in
think,
from.
but do you think your experience, like traveling and fixing households and stuff, kind of changed how you work in 3D? For instance, like you learned something analogically that applies in 3D.
Yeah, I think so. I mean, okay, one thing that really helped me, like when I was 15, 16, hammering nails into a building, being forced to go down south with my family to do these types of things, 3D is a long game. And to create animation, it takes a lot of effort and a lot of little details and things to do. So, for example, with this particular project made of wood, for example, I took the same know-how of like the wood building and things like that to build these houses out of wood, and it took a lot of pieces. There's a lot of little pieces of wood inside of these buildings, but they look credible because they actually are structurally relatively sound, made out of pieces that I would want to use. And the performance was great, and all the details and the trim sheets and everything that I worked with was it was really fun to do. I really love doing this project. I think when it comes to the 3D of like pushing your mind through something that's not comfortable, like getting the job done, going through the process, seeing that moving a wooden pallet, hundreds of them, dismantling them, tiny little nails, and pulling out the nails to build something that you can walk inside from the first floor to the second floor, something that's 12 meters by 7 meters by 5 meters tall at the highest point. These little houses, even though they're little shacks and things, you were pulling nails all day, pulling apart this recycled wood. But at the end of the day, you've helped this family live inside this building. So that was, to me, that kind of mentality of like, okay, so the big picture, maybe I don't see it now, maybe I don't feel it now, but if I focus on the tasks at hand and keep at it with the big picture in the back of my mind, one day, eventually, even if it's months down the line, we'll be done. And I will have this really cool project at the end of the day. And that satisfaction of doing it. And also, side note, that particular project, I did do animation where I actually built the houses in 3D and I sold it to the people who wanted to support the foundation in conferences and churches and things, so that they would send financing to build these houses. So I was
Oh,
doing
nice.
3D during the project as well. And that to me was actually a lot more fun to me. It was like, showing people how it could be done to make it happen.
You're the equivalent of a 3D monk.
Yeah, pretty much at the beginning. At the beginning, now I'm not. I've lost all of that.
So moving on from your, let's call it your civic duties, you obviously discovered Blender, and I would assume this was after XSI went tits up.
That's right.
Was Bforartists always on the radar, or was it Blender, then you found the branch of Bforartists? How did Bforartists come around? How did you end up in...
I used Blender for 3 years before Bforartists. Off and on, actually by the compositor. So I used Blender in an animation studio. In the animation studio, we worked on Let's see if I can find the project. Oh, some projects. Here we go. So I worked on this particular project, which was a television show in an animation studio, and they did cutout animation inside of Blender 2.76 and 7.8 later on. And this particular sequence, I did the layout for these shots actually, and the block out of the animation of these characters and this character as well. So I did all of these shots, and it's a super simple animation, and I had good fun. It was a team of 60 people, and we're using Blender, but at the time I was also using Softimage on the side with other projects like this one, and other projects as well, like, where is it? Wayakos, this one here. So this was my one of my last projects that I did in Softimage. This was another television pilot episode, and the last project, or one of the last projects I did in Softimage. By this time, I was starting to migrate to Blender. I was working in the animation studio. I was doing other animations, and then after a few years, I did learn about Bforartists, and because I knew the developer, he was a TrueSpace user as well. And so I knew him from the TrueSpace forums, and many years later, that forum's still alive. And he told us about his project, and I tried it out. And because 2.76, 2.78, 2.79, and Blender was terrible, Bforartists was like night and day. Left click, right click, rotate the viewport, all these buttons exposed on the left shelf. Everything was organized. Everything had the quick editor switches. It had toolbar at the top. It had the workspaces tab even before they existed. It had a lot of things that Blender 2.8 tried to implement later, and it just made sense to me. It was like, it made Blender usable, so I immediately dropped it. I started using it inside the animation studio, and I was one of the fastest layout artists on the team. I really enjoyed that. It was good fun, and I could help other people as well. I'm like, wow, do this, do that, la la la. It really like upped my game once I figured it out. But that was after a few years of using Blender before I learned of the project. It took some time.
So, are you the person to blame for all the icons?
No, I am not. That would be the founder of Bforartists. He developed the first icon set on his own. This already existed before I got on board. So, but to me, that's okay. I mean, if you have a look at TrueSpace, yeah, let's see if I can find an image for it. Here it is, the TrueSpace manual. Take a look at the images. If you look at TrueSpace, there is no text. The whole interface has zero text. So everything is basically an icon. Every operator, every menu. I mean, there are some menus, but most of the software is based on iconized toolbars. And it was really fun. Like, once you learn it, it was super easy to use. And the images, like the icons, could tell you what you could do or what it does in a very easy way. It could work in any language. And it was really cool. I mean, you can see it here with all the menus expanded. Everything is just an icon. This is where the founder came from. This is where I came from. This is how I learned 3D as a 13-year-old. To me, it was very straightforward. So that's probably why there are so many icons, is because we grew up with icons. That's how we learned 3D.
See, I'm the opposite. Obviously, I started with Lightwave and there was no icons. It was text-based, completely text-based. So I think you have two people sitting on the one camp where they love icons, like yourself, who came from that application, and then you've got people like me who came from Lightwave. So it's quite polarized.
Yeah, that's true.
So I think when people initially start Bforartists up, it's quite jarring, you know what I mean? So you need to quickly get over that hurdle, especially if you've been using native Blender. It kind of hits you in the face. Do you think that's a good thing or a bad thing?
Man, I think It's a
I'm
good
just going
thing.
to ask you, Oz, to
It's
put
a
you
good
right
thing.
on the spot.
Great. Let
Tonight,
me put
mate.
it. Let me put it this way. Blender has 100% of its Blender market base, and Bforartists right now has 1% of the market base. That makes the Blender user base that 101% that it used to be, which means Bforartists is targeting that little corner of the market that wouldn't use Blender. But now people are using Blender because they're doing it through Bforartists. To me, I think that's a good thing for everyone. And that's the good thing about open source too. I mean, yeah, it's a slap in the face, but for some people, it's actually more productive. Like I've had 3D Max users come in and they're very happy. They feel at home. I've had Maya users come in and they pick it up in a day and they start animating. I've had Cinema 4D users come in and they're very happy about it and they stuck to it and they stream about it. I've had also Blender users who are never happy with the way Blender is and they like it here and they feel more at home. Mainly because, I mean, once you learn the icons, your brain sees what it is instead of reading a text. A text is your eye goes to the start and then moves to the right, and then you know what it is. But with an icon, you just look at it, you can see it, one single eye movement, then you click. That little microsecond just makes life a little bit easier once you figure out the meaning of the icon. And it's also a lot easier to point and click on something you can see instead of 4 different identical squiggles on the top here. File, render window. I mean, yes, we still have those, but an icon is a little bit easier to hit. So at the end of the day, I mean, it's a slap in the face, but it's a functional system, and some people are very happy with it, and it's only growing. But yeah, each to their own, I suppose.
There is each
To
their
be
own, definitely.
to be the middle ground here, like when I first migrated into Bforartists, I was really blown away by the icons. I was because I had to learn what everything meant, and I was really confused because Blender is usually clean, but it's not about the iconography itself that kind of got to me. It was like the more polished, like it's not shortcuts per se, but like for instance, the multi shader editor, if we can call it on Bforartists, that is really helpful. Or the ability to set like custom textures for dragging and dropping. That's really useful. It's like you're able to make Blender even more hackable than it already is, and it's interchangeable. I like that it's not like a full separate software, and like it's not like Dre said, it's like it's not a competition. It's like a Blender plus. That's really cool.
Yeah, it's a compliment to
I mean,
symbiosis.
And expanding one thing, expanding that, uh, you guys like, you know, the Sisyphus myth, like you guys do an enormously huge and hard task, which is to maintain a software that goes almost, almost no, it goes live daily, and you guys got to keep it up, understand it, implement, test it, report it. And I know that people that come from Blender are mainly used to people helping each other, but I want to ask you on a philosophical level, like, why? Because you guys are not gonna get rich from this. You guys are like, we're not ever gonna be like Adobe or anything. Like, we do this out of passion, and it's really hard and time consuming. So on a philosophical level, why?
Why?
Yeah.
So why Bforartists, and why do I volunteer working on that?
Yes.
Mainly fear. I don't want it to die. I've found something that I like, and unlike True Space and unlike Soft Image, I don't want it to die. I would rather take control and keep it alive and keep it developing. And at the same time, like I mentioned earlier, that like I wanted to, make the world a better place to some degree. I don't know, give some people better options, quality of life, some kind, somehow. Well, I thought, well, this open source code could be that kind of little edge to my sense of gratification and fulfillment, I guess. Yeah, it sounds selfish. I mean, look at this. This is an interview about the host here. But it's the reason why is like, yeah, I don't want it to die, so that's fear, and the other one is kind of a almost hedonistic way of trying to be pragmatic and helpful and useful to somebody else. So those would be my two reasons of why. And also, I don't want to I don't want to go back to vanilla Blender. I feel spoiled as well. So I'm just corrupt. I don't think I could go back.
That's really weird to me. You calling yourself selfish, because I remember one time that you were on a vacation after a terrible crunch, and I asked you something, and you stopped what you were doing and sent me a whole file. It was really complex about mixing textures and stuff, and I was like, dude, I cannot pay this guy's hourly rates, and he stopped his vacation to help me. Like, this is really cool, but people don't usually do that. This is revolutionary, you know?
That's the community aspect, I suppose. And also, I get a kick
Yeah,
out of somebody learning. A side note, I did teach English for about 10 years while I was getting back into 3D. As I mentioned, I started teaching English when I was 18. So when I was teaching English, English isn't the most fulfilling job, and tutoring is very difficult to see progress when you're teaching a language. So I developed some mental hacks to kind of be happy when somebody progresses. So when I see somebody progress, that makes me happy. So I guess that's why I like helping, for example, you or here in the server or doing this Q&A. As I mentioned earlier, to some degree, it's kind of a selfish gratification. I like it when you succeed.
Yeah, to me, you're not an hedonist, Race. You can say all you want, but you're an Epicurean.
Well, you picked on selfishness there, and I think to a certain extent, or let me reword this. Do you feel as if you're being selfish with Bforartists? Do you feel as if you're driving it through workflows and through personal experience? There is that to a degree, but do you feel as if you're pushing it further than you should be, or do you feel as if you need more help pushing it in the right direction? Does that make sense, or am I just talking shit?
What do you mean by need more help?
Well, the way I see it at the moment, Bforartists, I won't say it's niche, but it's, in terms of the Blender community, it's like, as you said, it's the 1%. So I see a lot of effort on your part. Things like these chats, your tutorials, constantly keeping up, running the Discord, all that stuff. Do you feel as if this should be expanding faster than it should be? Or are you happy with the growth at the moment?
Right now, we average 15,000 downloads per month. My goal is 100,000 downloads per month. To me, I feel like it's just starting. I feel like there's a lot more people could be involved. There needs to be a better knowledge base. There needs to be a better onboarding system. There needs to be a better asset library, which secrets are out. I actually have a gift for you that's coming to Bforartists, the FX nodes by Iyad. He has kindly allowed us to adapt it into Bforartists' default library, which means we're going to get some, maybe half the Substance Designer nodes, but it's still a substantial library of maybe nearly 150 shader node groups. That's a little gift I wanted to announce today. But I digress. I feel like there's a lot more to be done. And a lot more building blocks need to be added. Brushes, geometry nodes, presets, basic block modeling stuff and layout stuff. Rigging tools, exactly. Default rigs that I can just drag and drop if I need them from the asset library, which could be nice. Or bendy bone, previs tools, a whole bunch of things. There's a lot of things that need to be done. I feel like I don't have a lot of time, or I start to have time, but I need more hands on deck if I really want to bring it out forward and give grow the Blender community, and also give Blender a little bit of playful competition so that their software also improves, and with that, Bforartists also improves. Both improve, and they feed back into each other as everybody benefits from the healthy competition.
So the reason I asked that question is, obviously, I like to ask nosy questions, but Where do you see? I do. I like to be contrary.
Good.
Where do you see Bforartists in the next 5 years? I mean, obviously, I see it from your perspective. I see you doing a lot of work behind the scenes, and I see you trying hard. How can you improve on this, and where do you see it in the next couple of years? Or do you not see it? Do you just think it's just for fun? I'm doing this for fun.
Well, to me, it's not just fun as well, because right now, like all of this work that I'm doing with my projects, with the Painterly project that I have at the moment, with the work that I do, to me now it's not only a hobbyist tool, it is my workhorse, which means I need to keep it well fed and fit. And to do that, I see Bforartists still being quite strong, even in 5 years from now, because I plan to expand or keep growing what I'm doing. And this would still be the workhorse to get a lot of the work done. Because so far, nothing I know has the flexibility to get your hands dirty to make the tools that you need to get the job done. And it also doesn't, and it's also the ability to directly invest in a developer to create something inside the software freely in your own vision on GitHub if you need it. Also providing the asset libraries to make things nice, quick, and easy. In 5 years' time, I hope that this software will be a lot more complete, just like ZBrush is complete with its brushes, or Substance Painter is complete with its materials and its masks, or Substance Design is complete because of its nodes, or Unreal Engine's complete because of its default Quixel library. I would love to see that inside Bforartists too, where you can just start working and throw in your presets and stuff that would be included with the software and just get the job done and modify things you need instead of working from the ground up, building up your node groups from the ground up to get the job done, or finding some obscure library on Blender Market. You're not sure what it's about, it's poorly documented, or not sure if it's well supported or not, or download 100 add-ons on something hassle-free. So I guess
And then do it again on the next update.
do it again on the next update, yeah.
I mean, there's nothing stopping anybody from essentially forking off Bforartist. And I think that's a good thing. Because I could easily create my own build. In fact, I could create my own build and technically sell it. You know what I mean?
Yeah, you could.
Yeah. So there's a few kind of probing questions I'm going to ask you. These might get you in hot water, so you don't necessarily need to answer them, but you're going to anyway.
Wait, but doesn't the open source license prevents anyone from selling it?
No,
Nope.
GPL does allow people to sell.
Oh. So guys, if you want to Bforartists 2 keys, you can send me a DM.
I'll give you a crack for Bforartist. So the first question is there any stigmata, or is there any kind of, do you feel a little bit of rivalry there? Do you feel as if you're competing against Blender? Is there any people looking down on Bforartist? Because I've seen the comments, so I kind of know the answer to this one. Or do you feel as if it's just plain sailing?
For me, I'm pretty obscure to people's critique. So to me, it's plain sailing. And to me, but just recently, I published a comparison videos on Twitter. These videos show what we did with Bforartists and what we did with Blender. And people started pouring in their comments. Some were pro, some were con. It was great. Controversial. Some people even decided to take time out of the day and comment 2 negative prompts about it. It's like, this is completely useless. What's the point of doing this? And I loved it because people paying attention, and this is exactly what, to some degree, this discussion is helpful. And this is the beauty of open source. It gives people some options. If you don't like something, you can go use that one. If you do like something, you can use the other one as well. That's perfectly fine. So to me, there is no competition in that regard, or no bad blood from me when it comes to what people think of Bforartists or what Bforartists thinks of Blender.
You feel as if you're pushing Blender a little bit. Because they must have you in the wing mirror at some point. They must see it.
Yeah.
They must see things that you do, even if it's simple UI changes, and they must think, that's actually better than what we do.
Yeah, I think so. For example, these tabs with 2.79 with Bforartists 1.0, we had workspace tabs. Pre-established, but they were tabs. Blender 2.8 added that even better than what we did because we had the limits of the code. I think that was a direct, kind of indirect influence. Before, we had all the operators in a tool shelf with icons on the left and all the properties on the right. Nice and cleanly organized with tabs and things. Blender later on added a tool shelf with icons, big buttons as well. They did even better than we did. And I think that's another indirect influence. We also use left click as a default. That later came in. Obviously, that's an industry standard, but those little things I do think help a lot. Or are kind of like floating ideas that came out. But I don't know, Blender is so backlogged. Like, even if we influenced everything or started committing code, Blender right now has 240 open pull requests with 5,500 open tasks and not even 30 developers going through it. And you can go through maybe 5, 10, 15, 20 tasks per developer, revisions per week, which means, and each open task could have multiple commits and maybe it will go through, maybe it won't. They still have to go through 240. Earlier this year, they had 150 6 months ago. So in 6 months, they have 100 more new tasks. To me, it's the concept of Blender catching up is relatively slow. But I do hope the ideas give them some idea. Well, no, who knows?
If you had to take, let's say you had to win the war against Blender, and you had to be commercial, or you had to make Bforartists stand out 100 times more than it does at the moment, what would you implement first? What would be your first change, or what would be your feature? That'd be a better way to word it. You had to implement something. So obviously you've got Houdini, very good with geometry nodes, or nodes rather. You've got Model's pretty good. Autodesk is obviously pretty much industry standard. Although what I have noticed is a lot of 3D Max users are now kind of side-eyeing Blender, because a lot of 3D Max users are actually generally modelers. So if you had to implement one feature or one super feature into Bforartist, what would it be? Money's no objective.
The asset library.
The asset library?
Why? What makes sculpting?
I don't know.
Let me tell you. Yeah, I'll tell you. The asset library. What makes ZBrush so cool? One, performance. Okay, great, but Blender's performance is getting better. But two, the brush defaults included inside of ZBrush. If you want skin, you have 10 different skin brushes. If you want a draw brush, you have 10 different draw brushes. You want a mask library, you have 100 images for masks. If you want skin dimples, you have 10 different skin dimples plus all the other libraries that the community creates. But the default ZBrush comes with hundreds of brushes, giving the artist their own style and a much finer workflow. So lately inside of Bforartists, we've been working on, like, for example, changing up the brush panels and the latest.
There's a standard profile again, folks.
Yeah, that's the. But my idea is, like, if you have more assets included inside of the system, same with geometry nodes. If you have some default geometry nodes, what makes Houdini so interesting is they have a node for everything. Yes, they are built in. Some of them are compound. What makes Unreal Engine so useful with its blueprints and other things, they also have a bunch of functions and compounds included in the software. Same with Substance Designer and Substance Painter. They have these great smart materials and smart masks and everything. Everything is downloaded, installed, and included with the software as soon as you open it. So if you don't know what to do, you just drag and drop and you get going. And then if you need something more advanced, you modify what they have given you. That to me is, I think, what could give Bforartists the edge. I know Blender is working hard to do this, so it's a racing game. The idea is that if I had all the finances or the support to do that, I would put all my money to get that library first before Blender does, and get it more complete, more documented, and more sold. To me, they're like those presets is what makes things interesting. Same with something like CapCut. CapCut's a great video editor, so hassle-free, and it has a ton of assets that you could use, transitions and cuts and effects and things. You open up Resolve, you can do the same thing, but it's going to take you longer to get up and running than using something like CapCut. So who is CapCut targeted for? Yes, it could work for a professional, but it's for everybody. It's super easy to use. Meanwhile, Resolve is used for the more professional ambience, which gives you the more finite tweaks, but at the same time, you have to download the asset packs, you have to get the materials, you have to work really hard to set up your presets and set up your things before you can get going. Though Resolve also has their own libraries as well. So
Do you not think that's
to
Do
me.
you not think that's making it too easy, but for artists? I know there's a certain element of, maybe this is just the traditional 3D artist in myself, where you had to model and you had to build textures and shit like this, but do you not think it's kind of a bit too easy? Or is that the ultimate goal at the end of the day? Because we could move on to AI.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
Well, to me, like the art is about the story you want to tell. So, see you later, Marty. Thanks. So the art is about the story you want to tell, and the less amount of time that you put into the story, I consider that a win. So if you have more stories to tell, then it's probably going to give you a lot more. If you have less time in the tools to tell the story, you can tell a lot more. You can share better education. You can teach more kids or teenagers or adults about different things. You can educate the world with more entertainment and things like that. So to me, less work is more art.
So
Well, that's kind of the future of 3D even, because people are backing away from realism and realizing that, okay, we can do a perfect rock, we can do a perfect glass, we can make a beautiful explosion. Now let's do something unusual and tell a story through other means. And I believe, Dries, see if you agree with me, but I believe that we reached the why point in art, not the how, because I'm not very skilled in any particular subject, and now in 2023 I have access to tools that were unimaginable for people like 100 years ago, for instance. So it's not about why, actually it's not about how we do things, but why. Do you agree with that in some level?
Yeah, I think so. It's the next step. Like we've had 100 years of the tech developing, the past 50 years of the digital tech developing, or yeah, 50 years almost. And we've reached to a point where the how is less of a question. We get into more optimizing the how, and you're right. Now we're getting into the part of like, why should we make a story, or why should we start using media to do different things? Why are we doing this? Which is an interesting kind of an eclipse of the next 100 years, I think. Okay, so what are these stories going to be? Where are we going to get into it? And focus more on the stories. Be free to tell a story. Yes, it's going to take a lot of work to tell good stories, but now we can start sharing different stories. A bit better.
So we might as well throw you out of the pot into the fire. So, just briefly, what you were saying there, does that mean you support AI?
Yeah, at the end of the day, why not?
You fucking walking on eggshells with that question.
Yeah.
Because you mentioned, I mean, there's a lot of artistic people or non-artistic people who are getting into AI, and they're becoming artistic. Okay, they're using this tool at the end of the day to generate art, which I suppose some people argue that it's stealing art, even though that's not the way AI works, but it's a different conversation for a different day. On the subject of AI, where do you see the technology moving forward? Or moving backwards, depends how you look at it, I suppose.
To
Where do
me,
you see 3D? I mean, personally, I think in the next 20, 30 years, our jobs will be done.
I think in the next 20, 30 years, our jobs would be different, not over. To me, it's kind of like the fill paintbrush or the keyframe interpolation system inside of animation, pose to pose, or the system of rendering light. All of these were revolutionary, and every time something like that came out, everyone was like, oh no, we're going to lose our jobs. The color artist, the inker, the person who's steeping up chemicals as they paint in acrylics on sheets of plastic. They lost their jobs, yes, but at the same time, they also retrained and they learned something new. They were very adaptable and they became a different type of artist, coloring artist in the digital world. And then with that, after they got that, they got into concept artists. And then now the concept artist is like, okay, so now we're going to the idea of actually realizing layout, and they become layout artists. And then when the AI catches up to being the layout artist, which is going to take a while, or not, and then we go into the concept, okay, then we stop being the layout artist and we start becoming the action directors, or the actors. We become the story writers or story creators. And we're translating ideas and dreams into actual reality. And the tools just facilitates what we wanted to do from the first place, either being a cog in the... We didn't want to be a cog in the machine, because sometimes it would take hundreds of people to fill in the ink of these acrylic paints. Now we can be an independent YouTube artist making a web series teaching our grandkids how to read in our own personalized, artistic and fun way. And to me, I think that is the future of where AI tools are going, is like, well, not everybody, not every grandmother is going to create a YouTube web series or a television show or an immersive VR world for their grandkids. Some people just don't want to be creative. Some people will not. And some people will. And some people have a story to tell and others do not. Some people want to hear a story. There will always be an economy for people that want to tell stories to people who need to hear a story. And there will always be people who want to make something and use the tools that are available to do it, and those who just want to consume it. But to me, like, we will have it, if we're creative, we will still have a job in the creative world, just with a completely different technology.
And even that, we can still use the old technology. I mean,
Yeah.
when television was invented, the radio didn't die. And another thing, because the democratization of the tool itself does not create artists, because everyone has an incredible 4K camera in their pocket, and not everyone's a photographer.
Yeah.
Everyone has access to a pencil, and not everyone draws. So I don't think like only having access to AI makes people artists or even AI artists. Because when I dipped my feet on AI, I was like, oh, this is super easy, and this is not. Not as it's not only just pressing one button. Like you gotta type a sentence and press the button.
Yeah, which is a bunch of keystrokes.
Pretty much.
No, but
I
just
think
kidding. It's like a different form of art. Like it's not very comparable. I cannot compare my drawing in paper or with someone that has Control Z, for instance. It's really unfair.
I mean, you briefly touched on the point that television didn't kill radio. And I would actually argue the point now that radio is more prominent than television. It just comes in a different delivery format. It's podcasts. I mean, how many people watch YouTube here?
Absolutely.
I don't watch television at all anymore. It's YouTube consumption all the time. Or
Yeah.
it's a podcast on the phone when I'm out walking or whatever.
I agree. Yeah, the podcasts have really blown up and everybody has a podcast show. Spotify has kind of replaced the radio, but the content is still similar to what the radio used to be. Now there's just hundreds of thousands of different channels that you could listen to.
Yeah, letter, emails. It's like the skeuomorphism of the the forms of art.
Yeah, exactly. So to me, it's like the TV didn't kill the radio, YouTube didn't quite kill television. The content's still there. It's just in a different way, produced in a different way, to some degree.
And I believe and kind of hope that we're gonna have a 3D revival moment in a couple of years ago, because people are gonna be so saturated of the AI generated stuff everywhere in everything that we're gonna be let's go back to the basics.
Yeah, exactly. Full circle. All right. Well, Seb, thanks for these really good questions and kind of drunk as well.
Wait, man, we're not finished yet.
But we're hitting, okay, we could do a little bit more. We're hitting 1 hour, 10 minutes. So it's,
So,
I guess we could
you got somewhere to
continue.
be?
All right, let's go a little bit longer.
We'll go quick fire questions because I think
Osama has another
I'm kinda
question
drunk.
as well.
I'm kind of drunk to get a few questions.
All right.
So I'm kind of drunk. You can read the ones on your writing because I cannot fucking read them.
No, it's payback for your accent.
Sorry, I do apologise.
No, it's okay. I wanted to talk to Trace a little bit about some practice methods, because you seem to do a lot of different stuff. Like you're also a one-man army, because you look like do coding and you write and you draw. How do you manage your time? Because I've seen your work. The first time I've seen your work live was in Blender Royale number 50, I guess, where you made the teenage mutant ninja turtle, and I was like, dude, this is impossible. Like, how do you train yourself to manage your time to be able to multitask without burning yourself?
How?
Because you're always on the Blender reel, you're always on your drawing, on your sketch drawing. So how do you manage your multi learning?
Good question. I can, well, like I mentioned earlier, like back in the day when I was doing homeschooling, I had to study by myself a lot and doing some hard work even as a teenager or things like that, or trying to do these 3D projects from beginning to end, even though I didn't get paid. I had to learn some strategies that just a little bit a day goes a long way, or you can't eat an elephant in one bite, or understanding that how your dopamine works, just a little bit of planning and some anticipation of what you need to do to get those the dopamine hit and on the actual micro tasks of the thing. So, for example, I need to make this traffic light to set up the layout. I need to put in the lights, all the little micro steps. I need to create a font. I need to do this. And once you start to learn that your brain has these little hacks, and you break it up into small little steps and turn it into a game, it becomes, I replaced games. I don't play games a lot now. I should, but I don't know. But now this 3D stuff is kind of like my game. I do it for fun because
Right, cool. Let's speed this up. You're talking shite now. Let's go.
speaking shite. Yeah, let's go. Next one.
The Blender Royale, best prompt or best competition that you've ever done? I'm just self-promoting here.
You can beat us on Blender Royale, Steven, but I doubt you can beat us on CSGO.
The best one I liked was the soldier in a field. I don't remember what the prompt of that one. But it was like a battlefield or something.
Fuck you, and I can't remember that one.
Oh man, damn it. Let's see if I can find it. Hang on.
The soldier one, the helmet. No, not a helmet.
I didn't win that one, but I really liked the concept.
You're off the boil lately, to be honest.
Yeah. There it is. The prompt was broken and bleeding.
Aye, I made that.
That was a good one. I enjoyed that one a lot.
Okay, let's say 10, 20 years down the line, where do you expect you to be?
20 years.
Fucking aspirations.
You almost burned my last question.
Fuck your
Well, keep
questions.
going. We got to go quick.
Your
Hopefully,
questions are done.
yeah. All right. 20 years from now, I hope to have my own animation studio. I hope to have Bforartists continuing to develop into something a new level. Depends where Blender goes and if it survives the 20 years. And I hope to have at least very strong educational content by then, and maybe a feature film produced independently without going into debt. That's my end goal, really. Or a web series, at least, or both.
Web series. Okay, just while White Rooster's asking you a question, I'll ask you one more time. What's coming up in Blender for Artists 3.62? Is it?
Ooh, okay. Yes, that is coming out probably early next week. But we have thick lines inside of the viewport, thicker lines than Blender. We've got individual brushes for the sculpt brush panel add-on, which means we can start creating the next add-on, which is to create the brush library. We've got the text editor find pop-up was always exposed to the header, the new F-curve editor operators, new operating system file operation context menu in the browser, some hotkey fixes, and some sampling weights and grease pencil. The movie clip editor also has a couple of other things like that. So not a lot really, but these little features, and hopefully an actual shader library coming soon. See if I can finish it today and tomorrow, and then I'll release Bforartists 3.6.2.
Nice. White Rooster Productions asked, what is your why? We learned a lot about who. But what is your why? What gets you up in the morning? What is your motivation?
Ooh, why do I do it? I think I'm gonna die. Money, yeah. Money's one of them, but I think I'm gonna die, and I want to do all these things before I'm dead, so I better not waste my time. So stick to it, get it done, do the things that I really want to do before I'm dead, because to me, I don't think there's much beyond it. So my reason is, I only got this limited time. My days are counted. Got to make the most of it. Let's stick to it and make something of what I do with my hands. That's the why.
All right, we'll finish up here, and we'll finish it on a question of a question. I do apologise. I think kind of drunk. I didn't read all your questions. If you had to, the last one. Do you want to read the last one? I'm kind of drunk, or do you want me to do it? So my question is, if you had to ask us this question, Andreas, or anything that we have missed, what would you ask? Always fucks people up at the end.
Who's the question directed to?
Anybody. If you had to ask a question or something that we've missed, what would you say?
Ooh.
That's to you, Andres.
If I was asked a question, okay,
What's the question?
what would you like to see grow in the community here in Bforartists? What would you like to see happen?
And we'll leave it on that. On that note, ladies and gentlemen, thank you for joining Bforartists episode 100. I do appreciate your time, Andres.
Thank you,
Been very
Stephen.
emotional.
Those very good questions.
Very good. I know. I do like to probe a little bit. Thank you very much. I'm kind of drunk for your template of questions. Thank you to the guys in the chat asking questions as well. Much appreciated. And
thank you guys for the opportunity. It was such an honor.
Yeah.
Yep. Thank you, White Rooster and Osama as well for your questions in the chat as well. And Zenther as well.
Now, everybody, fuck off.
All right, then this is where the stream ends. I will see you guys in 2 weeks' time for a special guest, Simon Lee, another NPR artist. He doesn't speak English very well, so it's going to be a bit of a special written and read out interview. So I'll see you guys in 2 weeks' time. Have a great weekend. And thank you so much, Steve. And thank you so much, Kinda Drunk, for everything. And everybody who connected as well. Have a good weekend. See you in 2 weeks.
Ciao.